and hopefully everything turns out okay. By the way, John, you're looking quite stunning today.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm got a new computer. The HD
Oh,
quality, I think, went up a little bit higher. You can see all
oh,
the blemishes and pores on my disgusting shiny disco ball head. But
oh,
nevertheless, thank you. Thank you for those compliments. And you,
oh,
sir, look
that's
glorious as well with that
mm,
post-apocalyptic beard growing in ever so
damn right.
thick.
Damn right. And it's exactly how it should be. Anyway, welcome everybody back to the OMB podcast. I am the critic who is a cynic, and I am joined once again by the wonderful, the glorious, the beautiful, the sexy, and
Ew.
dashing John the Flick Pick Flickinger. John, how
Hey,
are you doing, good sir?
I'm offended by three of the things you said, but it definitely wasn't beautiful or sexy. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Well, too
Doing
bad
well,
because you
man.
are.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, doing good. Just living life, trying to get organized, trying to do adult things, to be honest, not to bore
Hmm.
everyone listening, but just doing a lot of adult things.
Hmm.
I hate it. But what about you? What's new with you?
Oh, baby Thor just hit 3 months just the other day, so that's very, very exciting, and
Yay.
it's been crazy. I kind of, when we started your podcast and you had mentioned Wonder Woman 84, I was like, oh my gosh, we have not done a podcast since that damn film came out, and it's kind of amazing that it's been that long. And we talked about it a lot on your podcast, but man, I cannot still believe how bad that movie honestly is. They should be ashamed of themselves.
It's not like a real movie. Like I was halfway through it and I could not believe. Like I was like, this is really happening. Like
Yeah.
this is the script that they allowed to happen.
Yeah.
It
A
was
movie
just
though,
boring.
yeah, a movie though that to me wasn't nearly as boring. I don't know if I think you had said that you got to see it, but what did you think of Soul? Did you get to see that on Disney Plus?
I did. I didn't love it. How do I say this? I don't. It ended exactly the way I thought it would.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like there was enough stuff to
Mm.
make the hour and a half movie.
Mm.
Like it just didn't feel like there was enough in there.
So it was more concept than it was actual
Yeah,
being.
like if it was like a 45-minute movie, I felt
Mm.
like that would have been better.
You know what? Now that you're saying it, I think it actually would have really worked well as a short film. I
Yeah.
think that, especially since Pixar has always been very great with their shorter films, I think a 10 to 25 maybe minutes max short film would have been, you could have told the same exact story with probably even, I would say, more, I guess, more emotion in that shorter time frame than with the longer extended one. Because yeah, you're right, there are moments that I feel definitely drag on for a bit too long. I honestly though, I do like it a lot. I think I ended up giving it like a B plus or an A minus because
Mhm.
even though it's not the best Pixar film that I've ever seen, I did find it just enjoyable. And it's been a long time since I feel like I've seen a film from Disney, especially as far as like the major brand goes, that I actually just enjoyed for what it was. There was a lot of originality to it. It wasn't the most, I guess you could say, like mind-blowing film that they've ever done. I thought
Mhm.
Inside Out did a better job with kind of going, oh, that's amazing how they're handling emotions and the different islands representing different parts of one's life. And I think this one tried to do that a little bit. Only this case, they did it with the soul. And I thought it was very intriguing how they were like, oh yeah, souls go through training to get the different qualities of a person. And I like that. I like the way that they handled the, like, not the afterlife, but like the pre-life almost. I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, I agree. It may have been better suited for a short film.
Yeah, I enjoyed all the Earth stuff of him going back to Earth, and I just the when they were up in heaven or the existential crisis or wherever they were,
Hmm.
I just didn't like looking at the little glowy figures wandering about. I was like, this is kind of just like not that fun to look at. I was
Yeah.
like, I'd much rather be watching Toy Story or Monsters Inc. or The
Mm.
Incredibles or something. I just didn't feel like it had any rewatchability to it when I was
Yeah, it's
halfway
definitely
through it.
not an iconic film. I
No.
think I would say it's a solid movie. It's not bad, but it's also not an iconic film that you're going to rewatch over and over again, like a Toy Story or like many of the other, I would say, older Pixar films that have really stood the test of time a lot more than some of the more modern films that they've made, with a few
Mhm.
exceptions. But yeah, I think that it was for the most part enjoyable. But I totally get your point there.
I liked the not to spoil anything. I liked
Yeah.
the barbershop scene. I liked
Mm.
there's a few little things I liked about it, but I
Yeah.
just don't think I'd ever go back and revisit it.
As a Catholic, I actually very much appreciated how I don't even think they realized that they did it, but it was actually incredibly a pro-life movie because they
Mm.
established that the soul exists prior to the ensoulment of a body. And so that seems to indicate then that there is indeed life even in this case, it's before conception, but most especially during conception or even, post conception, because of just the way in which the souls actually work. I don't know if that was their intention, but it definitely seems to be much more of a pro-life film than I think they may have realized.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So, yeah, not too much stuff to talk about today because we just came off of an hour-long podcast. And I know that most of the people that listen to this podcast are also members of John's Patreon page. And so thank you for supporting me as well. And really not a whole lot of stuff to discuss. So we might jump into the podcast Q&A questions pretty quickly today. But I did want to say one last thing, and that is to get John's perspective on what's going on with movie theaters right now. Because I mentioned this on the last podcast, but we have massive movies that are losing hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, Wonder Woman is set to lose at minimum 150 million at the box office. Right now, it's hovering over $200 million in the red, and it's slowing down tremendously. It only made, I think, $5 million in 41 markets this past weekend internationally. It's not making any money here in the States. They keep talking about, oh, well, it's going to be exclusive to theaters very soon because of the month cutoff time on HBO Max. But at this point, everyone that's been wanting to see it have already seen it. And I don't think the numbers domestically are going to pop up. So my question would be, do you think that the big budget films are going to die off? Do you think that there's a time frame of when maybe we don't see any more $200 million projects that are just solo movies, and instead see maybe a movement to series or a movement to lower budget films, and hopefully by that better storytelling?
Well, to answer your question, Odin,
Yeah.
I think we have to wait until there's a great, phenomenal movie that's critically praised, because Wonder Woman was not that movie.
Yeah.
To see if that fails as well. That I think that'll be the testament. Like if Wonder Woman was a great movie and it failed and it's getting these numbers, I'd be like, ooh, probably down the road, they're probably going to start greenlighting $10 million movies and go that direction, or movies specifically made for VOD with that in mind. But I don't know, but they still have movies in production starting next year that are $150 million movies still waiting to go. So maybe in a year or two that could happen, but I think by then we need to bounce back. Theaters will reopen. People will leave their homes, stop barricading themselves inside, and go live their lives. But if this progresses for another year, yeah, probably. If I was a studio, I wouldn't be like, well, let's make that other $300 million movie and just roll the dice and lose money. Like that's a bad business move. That's what movies are. They're a business. So
yeah, no, I think you're right. It's going to be about a year because they have to see exactly how much money they will have lost on the films that are coming out. And I think once they see that, then you will start to see that change. Then you will start to see them recognize, okay, we really can't afford to lose this amount of money year to year. We're not making our money back in some of the places and areas that otherwise we could have written off this kind of movie, or we're losing so much that it's too much for us to even think about writing off, right? It's one thing if you're a movie like Tenet, which I think ended up losing around like $60 to $80 million, but they could look at that and say, oh, we can make a lot of that up in Blu-ray and 4K sales and other revenue streams that are not being accounted for. But when you're talking 150 million plus, you really can't have that conversation anymore. And to me, though, honestly, I don't think it's going to work out as well for them because AMC is on the brink of bankruptcy. I mean, they've already said that if things keep going the way they are, which they seem to be, that they're going to run out of money most likely by the end of January. And so if they file for bankruptcy, it would obviously be to restructure, so they wouldn't go away completely. And I think a lot of people would actually be happier with it because it means that the China influence would actually be gone, because the restructuring would essentially get rid of that ownership that this Chinese, the Wanda Group has in AMC. So it might actually turn out for the best, but they would obviously have to probably lose a lot of their theaters in the process too. Do you think that could have an impact on what we see as far as big budget films are concerned?
Maybe, but if theaters reopen and everything goes back to normal and they know movies are coming out, another theater chain will buy those abandoned AMC theaters. There's still going to be plenty of movie theaters to go to. I mean, I know where you live or where I live, there's 20 different theaters you can go to. So losing a few, yeah, that's unfortunate for the specific company that loses some of their theaters, but theaters as in general, they're not, there's plenty to go around for the next couple years. I mean, I'm sure they can hold out. You have Cinemark, you have well, I was going to say Carmike, but they also went out of business. Yeah, you have Cinemark.
You have Cinemark, right? Because Regal's essentially closed.
Yeah, Regal's, yeah.
Regal's still closed though, which is insane that I don't know what they're doing with, I don't know how they're making any money at this point. But yeah, Cinemark to me, I think is actually the best position. And they've asked the people of Cinemark, the CEO, about whether or not they're going to buy up some of these theaters that are likely going to be available. And they're like, we're not thinking about that right now. Things are tough and we're not ready to expand. But I think that they're chomping at the bit saying, oh man, we're going to get some of that prime AMC real estate. And I think Cinemark I think within the next 2 years, Cinemark could potentially become the biggest theater chain in the United States, or at the very least overtake Regal as the number 2.
Yeah, if you can be a vulture, I mean, you could pick it up. I mean, there's a saying, when there's blood in the streets, there's money to be made. Yeah, that's what a lot of people said during the 1940s in Germany.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see that happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's pretty much the main thing I wanted to talk about. And so we'll go into we got 2 Q&A questions, but they're both pretty substantial. So I think that we'll be able to spend a good bit of time on them. So Jonathan Carney says, hello, Odin, John, here are my questions. The first is, he asked, what is your favorite Blu-ray 4K in your collection currently?
I always say the same thing. And I always say Mad Max Fury Road, because I find the movie so rewatchable. It's so vivid and fun to look at. What about you?
So for me right now, since I do have some new 4Ks that I've gotten recently, I would say probably I love 2001: A Space Odyssey. I love having that on 4K. It's a great film. The fact that it was actually shot on film too.
Yes.
The quality is just such a great transfer. So I love having that. As far as my favorite Blu-ray, I mean, it really comes down to, I think, it being my favorite movie in my collection. And that probably would be, I recently got, actually, no, you know what? My favorite 4K movie, Whiplash on 4K, because I just picked that one up.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I'm still waiting on my favorite movie, Nightcrawler, to hit 4K one day,
man,
hopefully.
Fingers crossed, man. I mean, if they're releasing some of these films, like, there's some movies where I'm like, really? This movie got a 4K release, but Nightcrawler still hasn't gotten one? It's
crazy. That I want, and like Point Break, I went on 4K. I'd buy Over the Top on 4K. I think they did announce Shawshank Redemption coming to 4K. You gotta pick that one up.
They do an awesome Best Buy Steelbook edition of that, which they probably will. If they do the artwork right, that could be a steal.
I have the Blu-ray of it, Steelbook, the Blu-ray Steelbook of it.
Yeah. Oh, do you know when that's going to release?
I don't know. At some point this year.
Okay. His second question is, have you seen the anime film called Your Name? If so, what are your thoughts on it?
I have not.
I have. I got to see it a couple times. I saw it both with the English dub and also with the Japanese with the English subtitles. And I love it. I think that it is a phenomenal movie. There's a beautiful story to be told there. I actually remember I got to see it with my best friend in the world and my wife's best friend as well. And I think that just made it even that much more special, especially nowadays when we think about where we are with COVID and the lockdowns, and also me having moved to a different state than my best friend. I think Your Name is a spectacular movie, and I would highly recommend it. It's a movie that I think I own it on Blu-ray. It's a movie that I remember I had it in my box for a long time, in my cart for a long time, but I was waiting for the price to be right, and I was also waiting for specific versions of it to be available. So I'm trying to look over right now to see if I can see the film showing in my collection, and it might be just a little too far away for me to see it for sure, but it is great. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's got a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yes, indeed. Okay. And his third question is, what is your favorite film about government politics?
Ooh, I wish I would have had a little forethought to add to that. You go first.
Man, oh man. I mean, because I do like political thrillers when they are done correctly. And I'm also, like you, kind of at a loss for words as far as my favorite. Because I guess you could talk about, do you mean like dystopian politics, like real world politics? Because I think we were talking about this a little bit in your podcast where it was V for Vendetta. I think I would argue that's a political movie in a lot of ways. And I would say it's a pretty damn good one. As far as, I guess you could say, American political film, you had actually mentioned one. Isn't State of Play the one with Russell Crowe when he is a writer for a newspaper?
I was thinking, earlier I said Body of Lies.
Body of Lies. Okay, so I would actually say State of Play. I think it's an underrated film, and it stars Russell Crowe, and he plays someone that works for a newspaper. He's got a relationship with, I think Ben Affleck actually might be in the film as a politician, and it's interesting to see that relationship play out. But I like that one a lot. I like when they dive into, I think, newspapers, when it's newspapers actually doing what they're supposed to do, which is report on the news and break stories. And State of Play deals with that very well. What about you?
I'll throw a curveball at you. I got an odd one.
Oh.
How about the movie Election from 1999? Now, it's not like the big political government thriller, but it is about a student council in a high school running for like president. It's a fun, like underrated comedy movie. I
Can I tell
really
you a
enjoy it.
secret?
Yeah.
I hate that movie.
Why? Why?
I watched it on your recommendation. My
Pick
wife and I
flick.
watched it
Yeah.
together, and both my wife and I were like, I have no desire to see that. I think it's because there's too many serious themes in there. Like I was expecting it to be an actual comedy. I didn't laugh at all. And then when all the stuff happens with like the cheating and all that, I'm like, this is terrible. This isn't funny at all.
It's got a little dark comedy, but that's my favorite kind.
No. See, I like dark comedy. That to me was just dark.
I love movies about like characters doing like narration.
Okay.
And I like you get a lot of that in the movie. Really,
Oh.
I really like it.
Oh no, I couldn't stand the movie. I
love it.
I remember you kept talking about it, and I think it's in your Blu-ray collection videos too. And I was like, I gotta watch this film now. And nope, didn't do well with me.
It kind of almost feels like the unofficial Ferris Bueller sequel.
Absolutely. And he goes on to say, that'll be it for me. I'm sort of running out of ideas for questions, but I should have more interesting questions for the next podcast. Plus, Odin, I would like to also say that your OMB Report channel videos, where you talk about other things like politics and real world issues, is very helpful for me as far as updates. I do really appreciate the fact that you have a neutral stance with most topics, and I can get important facts on real world news without being completely biased. I know this is sort of off topic, but I just wanted to inform you that I really do appreciate your work and enjoy the content. Thank you guys so much for answering my questions, and have an awesome day. Well, thank you very much, Jonathan Carney. I really do appreciate that, because I'm having a lot of fun. I honestly am having a lot of fun doing that podcast, or I turned that one actually into a podcast and doing that show. And at first I started off doing several videos a day, trying to be more like Tim Pool, I'm a big fan of, who covers news and politics. But then I was just becoming overburdened with it. And so now what I do is every day I'm doing essentially a 20 to 30 minute segment, just covering basic news stories that are important to me and trying to break them down. And yeah, I mean, obviously I always say I do have a bias. You know, I'm a Catholic, I'm an independent, and that is my bias. And that's always going to influence the way that I view things, but I'm open about it, which is more than what can be said, I think, for a lot of mainstream media outlets. And I think that it's important. I think we need more independent creators out there talking about this kind of stuff, because we're kind of just all being fed garbage most of the time with clear political leanings, but they're trying to feign and pretend to be objective. And I think it's very dangerous for our political discourse, because a lot of people get their information from really biased sources. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, you can't trust a news outlet if it's owned by a corporation that is in bed with certain politicians. I mean, you can't trust that. So it's got to be slightly biased at some point. I think it's all. I trust nothing. I trust nothing. I trust you though. When I listen to your reporting.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Of course. And of course, we have a wonderful letter from the one and only Jacob Juice.
Oh yeah.
Dear Odin and John, since it's now officially 2021, film fans are always making up a list of their favorite films of the last year. With the previous year, it was hard to make a list, and I totally understand that. But this time I wanted to discuss more about a top 10 in general. I personally never make a top 10 of the year list. I don't see a good reason for it. I also don't like to add to a number to a movie. I mostly use numbers to calculate, not to make a list. I find it also hard to put them in order. In the end, it's just a couple of my favorite films, and I can rarely say which one is better. Most of the films I feel have a different genre or different tone, so it's basically, in the end, just some films I really liked. It doesn't matter to me which one is number 1 or 10, and they are in the end the same for me. It just depends on when I am watching the movie. The same goes for when I watch one of my favorite films. I have a couple of favorite films, but I don't have a favorite film. That's just how it works for me. So it doesn't have one single favorite film.
Yeah.
Says, my question is as follows. Do you think it is necessary to make a top 10 list? Do you like to make lists? What is the value of making a list? Thank you once again for answering my question, and also for making this great podcast. I also wish the very best for you both in the new year. We meet again in the near future. Yours sincerely, Jacob Juice. Well, Jacob, thank you always for your very sincere questions. It really always does brighten my day, to be honest. And I like making lists. because it is fun to do. That's why I like it. It's just fun because it's fun to try and I think calculate in because obviously I understand where you're coming from. It's hard to give a numerical value to a movie because especially when you talk about different genres, as you mentioned, it's hard to sometimes to compare them, right? It's hard to compare a really great animation to a really great drama, right? It's like they're very different categories and it's hard to really compare the two and to decide between the two as far as your favorite goes. But I do think typically in a year, I do have films that I enjoy more than others. And it comes down to both the objective qualities of a movie and then the subjective enjoyment of that movie. And I try to take both of those into account and almost in my mind give separate scores. And typically if I'm ever stuck on a list and I just don't know, what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and say, okay, out of 10, objectively, what would I give this film? Subjectively, what I would give this film? And then when I add that up, typically there is this natural order that comes out where one movie gets a higher score than another. And it tends to work out pretty well for me. What about you, John?
Yeah. Well, if we're going to just sum it down to like top 10 best and worst movies of the year, I like the years where there's a plethora of films to pick and choose from.
Yeah.
Years like this, I hate. For me to make a top 10 best of the year, half of it would just be me reaching and grasping at straws because these are 5 movies that I might throw in my list to make a top 10, but they're 5 movies I don't necessarily love, but they're here in my top 10. I don't like that. Now, could I make a top 10 worst this year? Absolutely. That one is easy. I almost enjoy the top 10 worst a bit more, and I think most YouTube viewers do as well. Negativity.
Isn't it funny how the bad films always still come out somehow, but the good films get delayed?
Yeah, always. They know what they're doing. They're just gonna crap these out. But yeah, I more or less I like top 10s. And people like watching them. It's just like it's easy to consume.
Yeah. Well, it's also fun to debate too, because you're like, how can you put this at this slot? And how can you say, therefore, this film is better than that movie? And it causes discussion. And it kind of almost creates this atmosphere of, and I know that you enjoy this too, I imagine, where it reminds me of when I was younger and I'd go to the theater with my friends, and then we would spend hours in the parking lot talking about it and debating it and talking about whether it was good or bad or what was amazing. What are some things that we recognized and noticed or didn't notice? And that's always special. And I think that creating videos now, especially as doing YouTube now for a couple of years, creating those kinds of lists starts those discussions. And it's always fun. It's always fun when someone follows you and appreciates you. And then they come at you saying, how dare you do this? And it's like, I still love you, man, but come on. And
it's at number 3 when it should have been number 2. It's just like at some point, it's just like you just toss things at the wall and whatever sticks. There's been a few years over the years of making YouTube videos where I make like a top 10. I'm just like, should that have been number 1? You know, like Star Wars, like Fury Road should have been my number 1 that year, not Star Wars.
What I've been doing, I have a website, ombreviews.home.blog. I need to buy the domain so it could just be like a .com. But I've gone back now to 2012 and I've listed all of the films I saw in a given year. And I've put grades. I just put letter grades behind each one as kind of like quick reviews. And I underline and highlight the ones that have gotten any A range. So A- to A+. And there's very few films that I've ever given an A+ to, but I plan to go back as many years as I can. And that's been fun. That's been fun going back and saying, I did see this movie, man, that was good, or man, that wasn't that great. But as far as this year goes, because I know that you didn't ask for this list, but I haven't made a video yet for it because as you mentioned, and as John mentioned, it's hard to make a list this year, but there were 3 films that have gotten into that A range. And I think that right now my mindset is my favorite film of the year was The Gentleman, which I gave an A to. My second favorite was Mank, which came out on Netflix, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And my third favorite would be Tenet, which I gave an A- to. Those were the 3 films in my A range. And if I had to give worst movies of the year, I think Artemis Fowl was the worst movie that I have seen this year. I gave that one an F because it was just that much garbage. And then I'd put Mulan, Wonder Woman 84, both of which got D pluses. And then Birds of Prey also got a D as well.
You named everything you said would be my top 10 worst. My top 10 best. Honestly, I don't have a favorite movie this year. I just, or last year, I don't have it. I wish I did.
There's a couple films I still need to watch. One that I really want to, and I think I might love it, and I hope I'm not let down, is that movie Fat Man. You remember hearing about that?
Yeah.
With Mel Gibson as Santa Claus?
Yeah. Oh, I have it on Blu-ray. It's up there. I got to watch it.
You need to send it to me. I want it.
No, it's mine.
I want it.
I need to watch The Sound of Metal. That's one I keep.
People keep telling me about that one.
Yeah, I got to watch that. It's just, There's something else too, but yeah.
News of the World,
No, that's not one of them.
Extraction, The Vast of Night, Unhinged.
No, not Extraction was the most forgettable action movie ever.
The Father, again, The Father, I think was one that I'd wanted to see that was mentioned on your podcast. Yeah. But anyway, thank you, Jacob Juice, for that. And hopefully that answered the question. And yeah, I think you're right about lists and please, yeah, don't feel the need to make lists yourselves. And it really comes down to just enjoying the movies. I mean, I make lists because it's just fun to do. It's something that I enjoy, but it all comes down to, do you enjoy the films or do you not enjoy the films? And with that, John, do you have any last minute things to say?
I do not. I just hope everyone's doing well, staying
Yeah.
safe, and just having fun.
Yeah.
Going with the
And
flow.
also, have you given a name to that little buddy behind you?
Sugar Boy.
Sugar Boy. So
that's what Amber. I brought him home. She's like, "What are you doing with Sugar Boy?" I was like, "That's a weird thing to call him, but I like it."
I'm gonna keep it.
Sugar Boy.
So if you would like to send a bunch of Sour Patch Kids to John so that he can fill it up, send it to his P. I don't know what your PO box is, but anyway,
I don't have one.
Yeah. Oh, you need to get one, man. People will send you so much crap.
I know. I had one, and it's just, you know what it was?
Yeah.
A lot of stuff was cool, but then like I just had all these boxes and packages, and I was just like, it just became kind of like a burden, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, you should open it back up and say candy only.
I just feel weird about people sending me like weird stuff in the mail right now. I just feel like, you know what I mean? Like,
I love my people because I tend to get more practical things. So I'll get a Christmas card from one of my mods who's awesome. Tina, shout out to you. I don't think she listens to these because she's a member and she can listen to it. But I don't know if she actually ever listens to the podcast, but shout out to her because she always sends me Christmas cards and always great. But I tend to get a lot of movies sent to me because I'll say, I have never seen this movie. And normally it's like a classic film or it's an 80s movie I haven't seen. And then like the next week it'll show up in my PO box. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So I enjoy it. And again, I think that people should, I think you should open one up just so that people can send you candy.
I will. I'll do it.
You should do it.
Do it. Do it. Do it now.
I'm back. Do it. Don't explain.
How did I get here?
Don't ask any questions. Just do
it. You came from my loins.
But anyway, that is going to be it for me today. So once again, a huge shout out and thank you to my co-host, John the Flick Pick Flickinger. You can check him out over on YouTube as John the Flick Pick Flickinger or the Flick Pick, and his second channel, John Flickinger. Also check out his Patreon page, which I'm sure all of you are members of, but if you're not, please consider joining over there because there is an hour-long podcast over there where we talk about a myriad of other subjects. We do a deep dive into Wonder Woman 84 and why it is complete garbage, among many other great topics. And so, John, thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So anyway, that is going to be it for me today. So thank you very much. Again, sorry that this one's a little bit shorter of an episode, but things are a bit crazy at home, as you all know. And we're going to try, hopefully, to maybe get one more episode out before the end of January to be bi-monthly again, maybe.
We'll do it. We'll get it out.
Yeah. I think we can try and get more of these more condensed episodes. And
I have more to say.
Yeah, there's so many things I could say. So many things, but I also want to spend a little time with my wife before bedtime. So that's what it really comes down to. But anyway, you guys are all amazing and people. We all have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless. You have to say it. You have to say it.
Bye-bye.
There it is.